and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to the second video discussion talkie about what brands I feel are struggling. I'm not sure if I'm going to title this like brands I think are going to go under, brands I don't know if I'm going to make it through the year, because clearly I actually know absolutely nothing about this. I am discussing it on mere speculation and observation alone. So feel free to take my opinion, to take my whatevers with a grain of salt, whole salt shaker, whatever you would like. This is just me sort of discussing my own, like I said, observations, my own experience, my own view of sort of how the community has changed and shifted in the time period that I've been around. This was sort of spurred on by Becca announcing that they will be closing their doors in September of this year. That sparked a lot of like, whoo, I remember a couple of y'all are like, I'm just waiting for the sale. I mean, I would be lying if I said a lot of my highlighters were not Becca. I have purchased many of them, and some of them are some of my favorites. So to see them go kind of hurts, but it also kind of makes sense as well. But I will be doing a whole video dedicated to Becca. Today, we're going to be talking about other companies that I think are just in today's climate. Like I say every single video, I really do need merch that just says oversaturation on it because I seem to always talk about it. But in today's oversaturated market, I feel it is a lot more difficult to maintain relevance in the market when you are competing with a level of so much products being released. I mean, ColourPop in and of itself, they create their own, like, they are their own galaxy, their own ecosystem. They make up like 10% of the makeup releases in the market by themselves. That's it. They're just 10% of the oversaturation. And so for some of these tried and true companies that have existed for so long, it's getting a little harder to stay afloat, because if you had asked me, hey, do you think Becca's going to go under? I wouldn't have said yes. Yeah, maybe they weren't doing as well. 2020 was awful, was cruel, was hard on a lot of people and a lot of companies because sales just went down the tubes. So with that being said, we're just going to go in and talk about some of these. And the first one I would like to discuss is KVD. Now, I talked about some things KVD before I knew about their like official rebranding, as in appointing a new face, a new spokesperson for the company. I also talked about Becca before knowing about them closing. But with KVD, y'all know that I've been psychoanalyzing KVD ever since I did my The Fall of Kat Von D video, my only video to bring me fame. No, that's not true. I also did the roast. KVD videos were what brought me to my whatever. So I've been someone who's sort of been fairly involved in the company. And I mean, I feel like it is even... The company now is a far cry to what it is. It's like an awkward shell of what it used to be. And I think that is due in part, I mean, basically after the whole vaccine thing happened with Kat, the brand just kind of took a downward spiral until, to the point we all know, she has left the company, she sold her shares, she has absolutely nothing invested in KVD, Kendo Vegan, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Beauty, you know? And so we had her leaving, which it was great for some people. I mean, a lot of people came out of the woodwork and were like, can I buy from them now? Is it okay? Am I gonna get tarred and feathered in the streets? Because sort of in the same way as we are now with Jeffree Star, there really was this don't buy from her, buy from her. You know, there were ethical and moral issues at hand with the main person in the company. So that, I feel, was a good move for them. I don't know whether they encouraged her to, like, you know, sell her shares, or she just said, you know, I'm out. I'm going to go pursue other things. I believe that I did sort of kind of predict. I was like, I so predict her being like, I'm dropping this. I have too much on my plate. I have a vegan shoe line. I have a music career. You know, I'm just going to walk away from this. And she did. And so then we had the very awful, awkward transition that is still transitioning. We haven't reached full rebranding, I feel, because we had a lot of these products where they were like, oh, we had products that still had the KVD, the Kat Von D packaging. We've had quite a few things that have been released that have been kind of, you know, not really well thought out. It seemed like they were trying to get rid of the excess of anything that was left over. They're like, okay, all right, we've got these things. They're kind of in motion. We might as well just see them through and we'll deal with it later. I haven't seen anything remarkable aside from their lip vinyls and the blushes. I think those are two absolutely beautiful releases. They've recently done a foundation as well as appointed someone else. I don't know their name. I will leave it here. They are a tattoo artist, so I guess we're kind of keeping in with theme here. They're a very talented tattoo artist. They are one of the tattoo artists that's like, look, if you are a person of the deep, dark, delicious melanin, and your tattoo artist says, well, color is not gonna hold on you. This person's like, no, they just don't know what colors to use and they don't know how to use them correctly. So I think that's absolutely fantastic and amazing, because there is kind of a bit of discrimination when it comes to that. You know, there is sort of this like, you know, oh, well, you can only get black and white, you know. So I feel like that is a really good thing, a really good breach forward. I think it's kind of interesting that they've chosen to just appoint another tattoo artist. Maybe, like, I have no idea what they're thinking. Like, they did that whole release and so many people were like, what's like, we don't even know I don't think they know what's happening, because when part of what made Kat Von D stand out so much is because of a lot of the imagery that she used, which was created by her. She created the designs, you know, she, you know, drew and did all the typography, you know, she was very much invested in the artistic presentation of her company. And so I'm wondering if their plan is to kind of continue that theme, but instead of having it be Kat, it's going to be this new artist here who's going to create the packaging and the elements, or if this person is just kind of the new face for them to get away from Kat Von D. They need something that is going to starkly set them away from what they used to be, and they haven't been successful in that at all. As much as I think this artist is an amazing person, I feel like the fall of this company wouldn't be their fault, because the company didn't really take any time to step back. I think it would have been so much smarter if they'd been like, all right, Kat's left, we're taking a hiatus to maybe think about where we're going with this, and then moving forward. I mean, financially, apparently one of y'all told me, one of y'all work in Ulta, and apparently Kat is selling like KVD, Kendo, whatever, is selling like hotcakes in Ulta, because in the beginning it was just a Sephora owned brand, you know, it was by Kendo. And so seeing this, I mean, I honestly have no sort of expectations. They could go under or they could absolutely flourish, and I would be like, okay, either way, because I don't see anything that's weighing heavily in one or the other. They're just sort of in this awful, awkward middle ground where they're producing just enough to kind of stay relevant, but they're not doing enough. Obviously, they're in the process of liquidating their old Kat products out. A lot of those things have been on sale for over a year, probably over 2 years at this point. We've been seeing the stuff at Marshall's and Ross and TJ Maxx and everything like that. I have never felt so uncertain for a company than I have KVD right now, because it doesn't know what it's doing. It's trying to rebrand with this new tattoo artist so it can at least stay similar and alternative. I think a better option would have been to just been, because it was Kendo and then it was bought out, to just Kendo Beauty, just Kendo Beauty. You know, they could have kept it sleek, minimalistic, but still alternative, you know, but instead we're kind of still clinging to that old image of ourselves that I'm not sure if it's going to be a good thing. Not because I don't think this new person isn't a good spokesperson, but because when you are creating on something that used to work and then you're trying to kind of turn that same thing but manipulate it and change it up a little bit, you know, and push it into this mold, I'm not sure how viable that's going to be. And if it really is going to be enough to set it aside from what it used to be and set itself in the beauty community. Because like I say, oversaturation, everything, all that sort of jazz. Obviously, these are just my speculations. I don't have any sort of reference or marketing or business degree, but I just see the majority of what they're doing as like flailing attempts at trying to not grasp at straws. They're just going in and pulling whatever they think will work. I mean, honestly, kind of viewing how their releases and how they've been dealing with things, it seems almost frantic to the point where the company really is just struggling with an absolute identity crisis. Is it trying to be something else? Is it trying to be the same thing but with a different, you know, face on it? You know, what exactly is our aesthetic? What is our goal? What is our mission? It's like, okay, we were procking on the vegan, and that's a thing, and I got torn a new run for talking about and being upset that their tagline is vegan. I'm not upset that they're vegan. I think that's great. What I'm upset with is when you take something and your only selling point is veganism. I feel like that's not enough within this current industry right now. You've got to give us more than just telling us we got to have formulas. We got to have aesthetic, you know. Don't just like fall back and be like, well, can do vegan beauty, wee! And so they have the veganism on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they're like, well, now we're getting this new awesome sauce tattoo artist. So we're still procking on the company being with the tattoo artist, but it's not owned by I just don't even know. Like, it's one big, giant, hot mess. And honestly, that's one company that if they did go under, they're like, all right, we tried to resuscitate it. We got to call time of death on this shiz. I'd have been like, yeah. You're right. You probably should have let that thing. It should have been like, do not resuscitate, because that company has been dead for a little while now. So I don't know what's happening to it. It's just, like I said, I just look at it and I'm just like concerned. So much concern. I'm like a concerned parent that's like, are you, okay, all right, you're gonna get the piercing? I mean, you do you, but I don't know if I can keep flying if they ain't gonna keep releasing nonsense and not focusing on formulas and rebranding themselves in an effective way. I just don't know. Okay, we've discussed a lot of high-end brands. We've talked about, you know, things at Sephora. I figured we might give, you know, the drugstore a little bit of run for its money, because just because you're affordable doesn't mean you're making ends meet. And one company I wanted to touch on, this could be mere pure speculation, but one brand that kind of came to my mind as a brand that just isn't where it used to be, you know, and even in the past couple of years, it's fallen so far from grace, and I don't see it doing the same sort of innovative products that it used to do. Ugh, Burp Squad. And that is Wet n Wild. Wet n Wild used to be sort of the, oh, well, they've got one or two products at the drugstore that are affordable, that are good, you know, the walking on eggshells and the comfort zone palettes, you know. But it was kind of like a diamond in the rough. And then they reached this level probably when they came out with those Mega Glow highlighters. They reached a level of the majority of new products they released were good. And not only were they good, they were sought after. They were sold out. I used to joke and I'd tell my mom, like, Mom, a high-end release is so much easier to get a hold of than something that's releasing in the drugstore, especially something like, you know, if you go to Walgreens and you want the new Wet n Wild collection, well, you best get there and be there every day to see if it drops, because they're going to get one of each thing, and when it's gone, it's gone. And then you're going to have people online. I mean, I remember when Wet n Wild did that gothographic collection and they did that Moon Tears highlighter. and people were selling this like $6 highlighter for 50 bucks. And not only were people selling it, people were buying it. I got mine as a deal for like 23, but I paid way over asking price so that I could have that shiz because everybody absolutely fell in love with it. I still absolutely love it. One of my favorite highlighters, and then they decided to re-release it with their permanent ones. I mean, it's a whole thing. But that time period when they were doing their boxes and they were doing, people were all over the Wet n Wild products. And then, I mean, this is their own fault, so they only have themselves to blame. A little birdie told us that, Wet n Wild, who was a strong advocate for cruelty-free makeup, oopsies, they were selling in China, thus having their Leaping Bunny certification ripped from their hands. And rightfully so, because if you're gonna play that game, you deserve to get torn a new one. So that put a very sour taste in a lot of people's minds. And a lot of people, especially a lot of the cruelty-free YouTubers that I watch, they were like, I'm not gonna buy from them anymore. And I've reached a point where I don't buy from them anymore. Because I'm sorry, when a company does that, where they're like, oh, we're cruelty-free, when you have that level, that significant level of trust breached and broken between the company and the consumer, that can kill you. They lost a lot of revenue coming from the cruelty-free people purchasing from them because not only were they cruelty-free, they were affordable and the majority of their products were pretty solid. Their blushes, their highlighters never got in on their eyeshadow, but their foundations. I loved that foundation for a long while. And so I feel that looking at Wet n Wild now and looking at what they're releasing. I mean, they're still doing sometimes big, stupid collections and stuff like that. And that's another thing. They keep raising the price on those fancy PR box situations. I've just kind of stopped looking for them in the sense of they're not releasing at the same level as they used to. Not like, abundance amount, but they're not releasing things that are different and stand out. Probably the last good thing they've released that I bought were those blush highlighter duos. Those are sublime. Highly recommend them. But on a whole, I was actually at the store today and I looked at the section. I'm like, oh, they have some eyeshadow palettes. Oh, they have some like little 4 or 5 pan whatevers. They're just not on the top of the game like they used to be. It used to be you'd go to the store and you'd see the sad, tired, old makeup, and then you'd go to the Wet n Wild section. You're like, oh, this is exciting. This is new and interesting. And now I look at the Wet n Wild section and they look like the tired, old, whatever. They're just not the same level that they used to be. I don't know if that has anything to do about, the loss of trust between the consumer and the company. I haven't heard or seen Trend Mood really post hardly much from Wet n Wild. They did post the Karumi and I think it was My Melody. They did that whole collaboration, kind of secretly wanted it, didn't buy it, but they're not at the same level of competitive makeup products.
Can you not?
They aren't releasing things where I'm like, oh yeah, this is new. This is, like they took their blushes. If I swear, anything's gonna put them under, it's like how many times they've repackaged their blushes. I'm like, can you stop? Can you just stop? I understand you're trying to make them more compact. You're trying to be more competitive. You're trying to be less bulky. But I still need you to stop with it, okay? And then when they do it, and then they reformulate it, and then they get rid of shades, it makes me angry inside. I mean, I have more faith in e.l.f. lasting longer than Wet n Wild. e.l.f. has actually been putting out a lot of really good and interesting things that if I had money to burn, I would be trying them out. Like they've got a lot of skincare stuff going on. Those little like 4-pan eyeshadows. A lot of y'all were like, buy that shiz, it's amazing. I've been hunting for the green one at Walmart. And so comparing that to Wet n Wild, they've got the price point and they're also releasing more cohesive and interesting products rather than just kind of randomly being like, oh, here's a setting spray at the store. Here's a random a random primer. e.l.f. is like, here's a nice structured skincare collection. They did that whole line of setting sprays that I was like, I want to buy them all, but I bought none of them. It just, looking at Wet n Wild kind of evokes that, like, you've got a fond memory. You're like, oh, I remember when what they released was good. I remember when they released consistent and good quality and stuff that I could count on. Whereas now, they're not a company that I buy from hardly ever, and I don't see them doing anything significant that would keep them out of harm's way. Like I say with all of this, I don't have business reports. I don't have net income, net earnings for the years. But kind of in the same vein as the majority of companies that I've talked about, they're just kind of a shell. They're not the champions that they used to be. They've kind of faded a little bit into a company that I don't think we think about nearly as much as we used to, because it used to be anytime Wet n Wild released something new, Trendmood would post about it, new lipstick, new whatever, and now it's kind of like, when they do a licensed collection or something like that, they're not releasing enough consistent in-between products to actually have a decent amount of stuff to look at. Like, you go to the thing and you're like, okay, they're lipsticks. They have like 2 highlighters, in the Walmart section. They're accessible still, yes, but I feel like the products that they're offering and the things that they're releasing are just a little bit stale in comparison to what they released and what they could release, in my opinion. All right. Now let's talk about, we should talk about this, Lime Crime. One of y'all mentioned Lime Crime, and I was like, that's a good one. I didn't think about that one. But if you look at Lime Crime's sort of track history, what? No, that's right, I said it right. Look at their track history, can you not? They're a company that has maintained wonderful, just sort of middle groundness. They're not a company. I never really considered them. This is just me personally, my whatevers. I never considered Lime Crime one of the greats. I never considered it, in the same line as Too Faced, in the same line as Urban Decay, or even Kat Von D back in the day. They were sort of that indie company that had a falling out, that had some really good products that people weren't buying from, and then they got picked up by Ulta, which gave them a little bit more steam. But even still, as a company, they release so many random, weird things, and they just do random releases. They're not the kind of company where we're gonna see, well, we did see a lot of eyeshadow palettes when they were doing that, like that Venus thing where they were like, we're gonna do the Venus Vivid, and we're gonna do the Venus the Immortalis, and we're gonna do the Venus 3 and the Venus 3000. We had a lot of those eyeshadow palettes, but they weren't doing anything outside of what they normally do. We'd have some, they'd do the lips, or they had like the whole plushies collection where it had like the 4 random shades that were supposed to be these soft and diffused. It was just weird. It would release it and you'd go, huh? I do kind of regret not getting those like nifty Polly Pocket whateverness, because that would be like they were even packaged in like plastic blister packaging, and I'm like, I would like to have that for my backgrounds. Wasn't impressed with the eyeshadows on the inside. Thought they were disgustingly overpriced. Adorable as all get out, but for some reason they haven't managed to find the middle ground between their super adorable kitschy whateverness and just like makeup. Love their 3-pan highlighter palettes. Love the Venus XL. I mean the Venus XL. They've got some things that are really stand outish, but they're kind of like this teen, tweeny, not sure where its demographic is, because they're kind of young and kitschy looking, but their prices aren't exactly teen friendly. And like I said, they just released, they're just like, all right, here's a line of 20 lipstick shades. We're like, okay, all right, that's a thing. And then they're like, here's a line of 20 of these. They've just got, even as kitschy and whatever they are, even amidst their own aesthetic, they seem almost disjointed. It's like each little set has its own aesthetic, which makes it kind of like a hodgepodge collection of these random makeup items rather than being one cohesive company. I mean, like when NARS releases something, you know it's NARS. It's just straight up, straightforward NARS. With Lime Crime, you're like, okay, we got whatever. We've got the Polly Pocket. We've got the lip blazes, which is all about, you know, token and stuff like that. We've got the iridescent lip toppers. We've got the plushies, you know, just all these different themes fighting for dominance within a company that is just such a huge collaboration of so many different things. I love the Venus aesthetic. Anytime they use that, I am just absolutely, I loved it when they did the Prelude palettes with that beautiful, just, you know, taking the same theme, Venus, but doing it a little bit differently. I feel like that worked for them rather than creating all these own little things that could just be their own little section, not necessarily attached to the company. Like I said, I love a lot of Lime Crime products. They're just not, because back in the day, you know, before like indie makeup, I feel really had a boom. You know, when they were an indie company, I feel like they were doing a lot more innovative things than what they're doing now. And by innovative, I mean, you know, they weren't releasing 20,000 lip things and one thing and this things and 20 shades of the little eyeshadow whatever thing. But one thing is, like, people used to buy from them because of the aesthetic. Like, they were an aesthetic. I mean, the unicorn lipsticks. I mean, come on. Whereas now there are so many other indie companies that are doing, like, there are a lot of indie companies that are doing companies but better than them. So there are a lot of indie brands that are doing Lime Crime but better. You know, we don't have to go to Lime Crime for the aesthetic. You know, we don't have to go to Lime Crime for the crazy liquid lipstick colors or anything like that. The things that they were doing to be innovative back then are things that are being done now and are being done better by different companies. I actually think that's what's doing a fair amount of these companies a disservice. Well, not a disservice, but the fact that there are so many other brands, mainstream and indie, that are doing what they used to do and doing it better. Like I said, I feel like Milk Cosmetics is a mixture of what Kat Von D used to be and what Urban Decay used to be, but doing it better with formulas, with aesthetic, with everything like that. I don't think I have a company that I could compare Lime Crime to, but they just aren't, you know, they can't just continue to sell themselves on a kitschy image. You know, they have to put more effort into the consistency of what they're releasing and the thought of what they're releasing. Like I said, they just seem to like to throw up these random things that you're just like, okay, all right. You know, they're eye-catching and they're fun and they're kind of almost gimmicky, but then after that hype dies down, how realistic are a lot of their products? You know, I bought at Marshall's a bunch of those like diamond crusher whatevers, and I bought them and I swatched them and they're so pretty and I don't use them. I suppose that could be just me. I know that there are plenty of other people who like and use and all that stuff, and it's not to say that I don't have products by Lime Crime that I enjoy. Like I said, their 3-pan highlighters, beautiful. But they kind of don't have, you know, where it comes to some companies where they're like not doing enough that's different, I feel like Lime Crime isn't doing enough that's consistent. You know, they don't have like, you know, a structured set of eyeshadow palettes. They don't have single highlighters. They've got some single blushes. You know, they don't have the same sort of hallmark collections that you would see in a lot more companies like Urban Decay and Too Faced and all of those. You know, they're lacking, I feel, in certain areas that are going to make them a reliable company that people are going to go to for their tried and true products. So as much as I love Lime Crime, I mean, with all of these companies, it's like there is such a disconnect and a shift from when I started YouTube. Lime Crime was still a big no-no company. You know, when I started YouTube, Lorac and Smashbox, that was the shiz to have. That was the shiz to buy. Whereas now, I feel part of one thing about the oversaturation is that it has become a lot more accessible. That's the only good thing. You know, you don't have to go to Ulta or go to Sephora to buy makeup. There's so many different companies, indie brands, you know, there is so much variety. It gets really intimidating and intense, but it also means there's pretty much something for everyone. And so while there used to be these like little niche pockets that we had that were like, wow, this is not a thing. That's what made Kat Von D so significant, is the fact that that company offered something that other brands weren't doing. Kind of the same thing with Jeffree Star. You know, he was doing color stories and on your face products and stuff like that that other companies aren't doing, and to a certain degree still aren't doing. So where there used to be that need and that like we could only go to Lime Crime for these things, there are all plenty of others. If you want crazy liquid lipsticks, a lot of brands, even mainstream ones. I mean, I could give you a laundry list of indie brand liquid lipsticks that have got every color from like black to puce. There isn't that same level of alternative scarcity, kind of like alternative, edgier, crazier makeup has become not necessarily the norm, but it's most definitely a lot more accessible and a lot more permitted, a lot more accepted. It's seen as being, you know, more the norm and more like, yeah, sure, bright, crazy, colorful eyeshadow and crazy things. Yeah, that's going to be a thing that we now see in mainstream companies as well. It's not so much that their products outdate them so much as it is their approach to releasing new products. You know, they're kind of, you know, doing the same thing in some ways while not, you know, doing the same thing in others. They lack a level of consistency that showcases who they are as a company, as a brand. You know, they're kind of going around and they're like, well, here's this holiday palette, and then here's this birthday palette. Like I said, they're just kind of throwing these random things out there and seeing if they will stick, rather than focusing and zoning in on what they're actually missing in their makeup line and adding products to that. I mean, that's my hot take on the situation. Definitely let me know what you feel down below. We made it through 3 brands. I'll probably continue doing this series until y'all tell me to stop. I've got a few more that I would like to talk about, so that's gonna have to be another video. I apologize for my long-windedness. I need to upload more of my writing to Patreon, because when you read that shiz, you will understand why I'm long-winded in person. A lot of myself shows up in my writing. Like I said, would love to hear you all's thoughts and opinions on this. This is kind of a new level of introspection that's just, it's become a lot more relevant in the past, due to the past year. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!